Today we're going to talk about another important concept in geometry, which is midpoint, and how we can find the midpoint, especially in that one-dimensional line segment type distance. So first we need to talk about what a midpoint is. A midpoint is the middle of a line segment. It's a point that is exactly halfway between two endpoints. Our midpoint formula is x1 plus x2 divided by 2, which gets us the midpoint. So if we look at this first example over here on the right, we've got C, which I'm going to call x1, and D, which I'm going to call x2. So we're going to take x1 plus x2, and we're going to divide it by 2. So 2 plus 28 is 30, divided by 2, which equals 15. So on this number line here, 15 would be our midpoint. It would be halfway between 2 and 28. And the way that we denote that is we draw a little line between the our new point 15 and the two endpoints. So we know that those two line segments are congruent. So let's look at 3 more examples. So midpoint of AB. So A is -4 plus -2 divided by 2. So this turns into -4 minus 2, which becomes -2, or -6 divided by 2, which becomes -3. So if we look at our line segment, -3 is, yes, in fact, in between points A and B. Now let's look at C and B. So B is -2 plus 1, which is C divided by 2. -1 plus 1, or -2 plus 1 is going to be -1 divided by 2, which stays a -1/2. So if we mark that on our number line, -1/2 would be halfway between 0 and 1, which, yes, is in fact the midpoint between B, C. Now we're going to look at AC. A is -4 plus C, which is 1. -4 plus 1 divided by 2. -4 plus 1 becomes a -3 divided by 2. And I like to leave improper fractions as improper. So -3 over 2 would be the answer, which is a -1/2, which would put it there. So if we look at A, that's 2.5 to the midpoint. We look at C, that's 2.5 to the midpoint. And so that's how we would find midpoint on a number line or using 2 points. The other concept that we need to know about midpoints are midpoints of segments. So the midpoint of a segment is a point that divides the segment into 2 congruent segments. And again, we mark that segments are congruent by using those 2 little hash marks between AB and BC. Those are the markings that tell us that AB is congruent to BC. So that line segment AB is congruent to line segment BC. A line, a ray, or a segment that intersects a segment at its midpoint is said to bisect the segment, and is called the segment bisector. So if we're looking at this diagram on the left, line L is my segment bisector. The line itself hits at B, and at point B equals the midpoint, and so it bisects line segment AC. All right, so now we're going to look at how we can calculate the midpoint if we're just given a line and some algebraic terms. So one thing that we always need to think about is midpoint always means equal. So anytime a problem tells me that something's the midpoint, I'm always going to draw an equal sign there because I have now created my equation. So now I have 7x minus 16 equals 4x plus 2. I'm going to add 16 to the other side. Those cancel. I'm left with 7x equals 4x plus 18. Then I'm going to subtract 4x to the other side. The 4x's cancel. I'm left with 3x equals 18. I'm going to divide by the coefficient of 3, which tells me that x equals 6. And then this is another type of midpoint problem that you might see. Again, as soon as the problem tells me that H is the midpoint, I'm going to find H, and I'm going to draw an equal sign to help me remember how to set up this problem. So 5x plus 2 equals 9x minus 10. I'm going to add 10 to the other side. I'm going to cancel out the 10s. I'm left with just 9x on that side, and on the other side I have 5x plus 12. Next, I'm going to subtract 5x to the other side. I'm left with 12, and then 5x minus 9 minus 5x is 4x, and then we're going to divide by our coefficient, which is 4. So I'm left with 3 equals x. But this problem doesn't want me to find x. It wants me to find GH. So GH is 5x plus 2. Which equals GH. I know that I know that x equals 3, so 5 times 3 plus 2 equals GH. 15 plus 2, so 17 units, or 17 equals GH. So that's how long segment GH is. Just like we've been doing in the other notes, I want you to write the inverse, converse, and contrapositive of this of this conditional statement. If it's true, I want you to tell me it's true. If they're false, I want you to give me a counterexample. And I also want a counterexample for that last one. And again, you're more than welcome to check the completed notes on Canvas.